We take a three-prong approach. So we're a research company at our hearts. We have a lot of neuroscientists who work for our team and really take us through the behavior and the neuroscience behind why people do what they do.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. And today, my guest is from the company called Lyft, and her name is Alyssa Nolte. Welcome to the show, Alyssa.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about Lyft and what you do.
So we really specialize in helping teams get what they want. So you have an initiative, you have something that you're trying to do, and you know kind of where you want to get to, but you don't really have the treasure map of how you go from, hey, I want to achieve this thing to how you're actually going to do it. So we help teams figure out what are the resources they need, what's the plan they need, and who do they need in what seats in order to be successful.
So what's your approach to doing that? Like how do you teach them to do that?
We take a three-prong approach. So we're a research company at our hearts. We have a lot of neuroscientists who work for our team and really take us through the behavior and the neuroscience behind why people do what they do. So we do discovery to understand what it's like in your organization. What are the barriers that we're going to encounter? Then we help you elevate. So we've identified the barriers, we've identified your accelerators. We're going to help you figure out what you need to bring your team to that next level. What are your gaps? What are you missing? And then we help you launch. The goal is to take your strategic initiative, your goals, and your vision, put them on paper, and put them into a real solid plan that takes you from where you are today to where you want to be in the shortest path possible, really shortcutting that process to take your team where you need them to be.
So what is your advice for somebody who's maybe underfunded on positions? Their budget's just not high enough to match market rate.
You know, one of the things that we've discovered, especially working with tech companies, is it's there's always more you can do. You have some of the smartest people in the workforce working for your teams, and there's always more that you can do, but it's really about prioritizing, which is hard. I feel like a lot of the tech leaders that I talk to and that I work with are really big thinkers. They have big grand visions for their teams. And when you have those big ideas, what is the single kernel that's going to be the most impactful in order for you to be successful? What is the one thing you can do that moves the ball forward? Not the 50 things you can do that move a centimeter, but the one thing you can do that really hits it out of the park. That's what we tell tech executives.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I mean, when I was running a tech department, it was also severely underfunded because the company believed in relying on bonus pay. So like my salary was actually about 1/5 of what I actually earned. I earned mostly a bonus, and that was as an executive. So they did the same thing with like, a software developer, for instance. And I was just think to myself, well, okay, there's got to be people out there that are willing to accept this salary. It's just about finding the top people in that pool who are willing to accept the salary. So it's kind of interesting. So in your discovery process, what sort of things are you looking at?
So our background, we got started as a customer discovery company. We got hired by some of the largest companies in the world to basically help them shorten the buying cycle to go from I'm considering purchasing your software, your technology, or whatever, to I'm ready to make a deal, I'm ready to close this deal. And we realized that that process of getting people to buy into what you're trying to get them to do is really no different than the tech leader's internal process. You might not be asking your employees or your team to pay you in cash, but you're asking them to pay you in a different form of currency, which is their attention, which is their loyalty, which is their buy-in. So in a way, as a tech executive, you really are selling to your team about what your vision is, what it could mean for them. And while that compensation might not reflect market rate, what the upside and the opportunities are, and then being able to, as a leader, deliver on those promises to ensure that you can continue to maintain the attention, the currency, the time, the focus, the loyalty of your team, so that when it comes time to move on to your next goal, initiative, or thing that you want to achieve, you have the team behind you and they are loyal, ready, and willing to do what it takes to be successful for you and for themselves.
So what kind of tips would you have for helping make the team be that loyal team that you're looking for?
For me, it's always down to authenticity. I think that a lot of leaders will read a great leadership book. They'll read Good to Great, or they'll read, whatever book is on this month's leadership book of the month club. And they, for a short time, internalize that and try to be that and try to emulate that. But at the end of the day, we as people can only sustain some kind of a front for so long. You have to really truly at your core believe those things and be authentic and upfront about your team. So for example, my team knows that I'm good at certain things and I will be very honest with them about the things that I'm not as good at. And we want to be really clear and honest to say, these are my strengths, these are my gaps. How can you guys as my team help me fill those? How can you make sure that my strengths are amplified and I'm focusing my limited time on the things that are going to make the team successful? And then giving them the freedom and space to do that as well. If I have a team member who's really great at this one task, let them own that, especially if I'm not very good at it. Let them own it without me getting in there and being inauthentic and saying, well, I am your boss, so I get to be in charge of this task, even though I'm not very good at it. So self-reflection, authenticity, and making sure that you're looking at what your team cares about and what they're good at.
That's excellent advice, because I think too many leaders think it's their job to make every decision, and or at least have some influence over every decision. And the reality is, you hired a team, and each of them has a role, and you should allow them to do their role. And the only time you need to step in is if something's going off the rails. I mean, it's a tired analogy from old management books, but it's true. Having the right people on the bus is okay, but they have to be in the right seat too. And then you can't like sit on top of them. If
Right.
they're going to be comfortable in what they're in this bus ride, they have to be able to be comfortable in the bus ride. I love I love the older analogies because they're so simplistic. And like I've had people say, what does a bus have to do with people? Well, it really
Yeah.
doesn't, but it's a contained area, and then there are seats, and you have to put people in the right seats. um how do you feel, what role do you think culture plays in developing a good, strong team?
I think the leader is 100% responsible for the culture, good or bad. If you have a great culture, congratulations. If you have a bad culture, that's on you. I just talked about like the latest book that we're all reading. I've recently been reading Leaders Eat Last. And it's the idea that, when things are going well, when there's plenty of cake to go around, you're the last one to take a piece. But when there is no cake, when something is going wrong, that's on you too. So you need to always basically sit back when there's a celebration and celebrate your team, and be the shield when things are not going well, because at the end of the day, culture is your responsibility as the leader. You are the one who drives it, you are the one who decides it, you are the one who gets to decide if it's a good culture or if it's a bad culture. And your team responsibility is to follow along and join in that culture. But at the end of the day, it's on you.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I work with tech executives and coaching them, and most of them are a little further on in their career, and they've never been trained how to be a leader. And a lot of them have children already. And so I'll ask them, like, if you were going through a difficult time and there wasn't enough food on a particular meal, are you going to eat, or are you going to let your children eat? And then they always say they'll let the children eat. And I said, then why don't you treat your team the same way? Put them first, don't put them last. And then the other point about that is, they'll say, oh, well, the company culture is bad. What can I do about that? The company culture is bad. And I always say, who's in charge of your department? Who impacts your department? You do. So how about you create a culture within your department that isn't a bad culture? Fix the problems. Don't, and I think that's the thing is, as I remember when I was a CTO, we had a 6-person executive team.
Hmm.
Any one of us could have affected the company culture overall. And when you'd see a problem, it was like a political rally. You'd have to go to other department managers and say, do you see this problem too? Let's bring it up in the next meeting. And you'd build your little collaborative team that was going to help you make that change. And then we'd bring it up, and thankfully, like in that company, we had a CEO who listened, and he didn't always agree with what we would bring up, but he'd always say, well, if my leaders are telling me this is a problem, we got to look at it. It must be a problem. So that's interesting. I think you're right. I think culture makes or breaks almost every situation, because if you come into a place where it's just toxic, you don't want to stay there. You could get paid lots of money, and you're not going to want to stay there. I think that's a interesting aspect. So Tell me a little bit about your background. Like, what brought you to this point where this is what you do?
So I always joke if I ever write a book someday, it's going to be why you should take an unpaid full-time job right out of college. So when I was getting ready to graduate, I had a bunch of offers from really great companies. They were bigger companies, good money, and I was excited about it. But then I came across a startup company that was pre-revenue. They had I mean, no customers to speak of, but I was really excited about the people who were doing it and what they were specifically doing. And so I, much to my parents' delight, turned down these full-time offers to have a real job to join a pre-revenue startup in which I only got paid when the company made money. And I only got paid for the sales that I closed. So in my first year of full-time employment, I made $1,200. And it was a very rough year. The next year, I think I made 10,000. And then it just slowly scaled from there. But in those experiences, I was able to grow a business that I truly understood, that I cared about, with a team that had the same level of passion that I did. And we ended up scaling that to a multi-million-dollar business and was acquired in 2020 by Lyft. So I'm still working with the same people, the same team. And to your point that about the culture, we had a lot of really cool people that were very, very talented and left really high paying jobs to come work with us because of our culture, because of the experience, because of the opportunities that they would have to grow personally and professionally. And now that they've moved on to even larger companies doing greater things that they would not have had the opportunity to build the skills for in their previous careers. So we were a launch pad for some people. Some people are still with us. My former founder and I are still together, still working together. And it's just one of those things where I've had opportunities to do things that people who I graduated with can't even imagine. I've helped write and publish an Amazon bestseller. I've worked with some of the largest companies in the world. I've consulted on strategic initiatives for the, huge companies and helped them really turn their direction. I've had an opportunity to work right alongside companies like McKinsey to develop and create opportunities for organizations. So that's kind of my background, just really entrepreneurial, trying to do good work with really good people.
So, with such a small salary, how did you survive?
I'm fortunate I was engaged to an accountant at the time, and we ended up getting married. And he was much better at money than I was, and was willing to take the shot on letting me try this. My dad was an executive for HP at the time in their services division, and he was the one who really convinced me to do it. He said, you can either try this when you're making six figures and you have to walk away from a job, or you can try it now when you don't know any different, you don't have any money anyway. So what's another couple of years of not being able to do this? So
That totally makes sense, and it's good that you had support because to me, to my way of thinking, I've been married twice, and in my first marriage I struggled with things like that because she wanted a, I always tell the story. We went on vacation for 2 weeks and we left with so much money in our bank. We spent a whole bunch of money while we we're on vacation. We came back with 3 times that amount of money in the bank, and yet my wife at the time still wanted me to take a quote full-time job because she couldn't see running a business would make money. And I never could understand that. Like, how do you go on vacation, spend a ton of money, come back and you have triple the money in your bank account and think, wow, we need a full-time job? Doesn't make any sense to me. But my current wife, she's very supportive of concepts and ideas like this. And in fact, she immigrated here from Canada, and she actually started her own virtual assistant agency that she's had now for 7 years. And so we both kind of have the similar mindset about that. And I can tell, you're the type of person who maybe you needed the little encouragement to take the leap, but you're happy that you took the leap, right?
yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine my life any other way. And it really is about that support system too. And I think that's something that executives who have quote unquote full-time jobs need to remember as well. It's not just your internal, like, I hate this word, but your family at your company, your team, the people that you work with, but also your family and support system at home. It's not just 40 hours a week when you're the leader. I don't know about you, but I am thinking about my team almost 24/7. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and make a note. I have a a voice note going at all times on my phone, basically all of these things that I'm thinking about, an idea that I had, a thing that I want to do to reward the team, a thing that I'm excited about that I want to share with them and give them ownership over. It's not a job to me. Being a leader is who I am. And the people that I serve as a leader are really the ones who get the bulk of my time and attention. And my family has to recognize sometimes that if I'm working on a Sunday night or if I'm waking up in the middle of the night taking notes, it's not because I don't want to be with them, but I'm also thinking about my other team, my other family who sees me quite a bit more than my actual family.
Well, when you phrase it that way too, it makes, I always tell my wife that I get frustrated these days because, I'm 58 years old. I've seen a lot of things. And the world in like the last 10 years just seems to have turned on any kind of capitalistic company. And it frustrates me because when you hear people talk, it's just all about give me, give me, give me. I want more, I want more. And I always say, did you make all of the sacrifices? Like you said, did you say $1,200 in the first year, right? So you basically made $100 a month for the first year. And you say to someone, did you sacrifice for an entire year and only make $100 a month and still survive? Did you do that? No, you didn't do that. And that's why these businesses deserve to make money. It's not like they're stealing the money. They're offering a product or a service. People are buying it and they're doing so well that they're making money. It frustrates me when people don't pay attention to what I call the entrepreneur's journey, because without you, this company wouldn't even be in existence. And those people that work for you have that to thank you for, that they have that job. And not that you'd want be like, oh, you must thank me for having a job, but the point being, just like, understand that, yeah, you're the one working on a Sunday night to make sure that they get everything that they need, and you're the one waking up at 3 a.m. going, oh, I forgot to take care of this for so and so. That's me too. I do exactly the same thing. I mean, I use a time management system that requires me to like write everything down on a list so that you get it out of your head. And sometimes those things still bother me. It's like when it's a personnel issue, it's close to my heart. So then I care, and so I wake up thinking about, oh, that's right, they asked me to send them this. I better make sure I do that. And I don't care if it's Saturday or Sunday. And I work from home, obviously, so I don't have to pay for an office or anything. And I'll walk from the living room into my office, and my wife just knows that she'll say, how long are you going to be? 5 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour, and she's okay with that. And she does the same thing because we both, we have responsibilities to a staff. So let's talk about motivating people. All right. Because I think you hit on some things earlier. You didn't use the word, but basically you talked about empowering people to do their role. And at the same time, what do you do to motivate them to get better at what they do? Because, just keeping the status quo is probably not going to be good enough as a company grows. So how do you motivate them to get better?
So I have a method, I guess I'll call it, that I use, that I came up with as part of coaching. So in addition to being a business leader, I also coach a high school sports team. And I have noticed so many parallels between the ways that I have to motivate my athletes to achieve the goals we want to achieve and the ways that I motivate and I work with my team members. So I call this the impact method, and it stands for intentions, motivation, perseverance, accountability, communication, and trust. And it's the idea that in order for you to be motivated, you have to understand my intentions. You have to understand the vision. You have to understand not just the goals we're trying to achieve, but the intent behind them, which is deeper than a goal. I can tell you that I want us to reach a certain level, a certain echelon, a certain revenue goal. But you have to understand the intentions behind that. It's not just about reaching a revenue goal. It's about, if we reach this revenue goal, then we can do bonuses for everybody. We can do raises for everybody. We can hire new staff to expand our department, if that's the goal. If it's about uptime, this is what an uptime goal means. So taking those goals and those things that we want to achieve and putting intentions behind them, the why of why we're trying to achieve those. If you don't have intentions in place, you can't even talk about motivation. How do I motivate you for a revenue goal if you don't understand the impact on your own personal self and your own personal experiences. So trying to bring everything down to the intentions level. And I think there's a difference between motivation and perseverance. For me, motivation is the initial spark that gets you going, gets you that momentum. It's perseverance that I think people actually struggle with when you're not seeing results, right? You know, when you want to lose weight, you will go to the gym for a week and you didn't lose 15 pounds, so you quit, right? You were motivated, but you didn't persevere. So how do intentions impact motivation? How does intentions impact perseverance? And how does motivation impact perseverance? And it all comes back to that core nucleus, which is trust. Does my team trust that my intentions are good? Does my team trust that my intentions will help motivate them and I will help them persevere? Does my team trust me when I hold them accountable for what they promised? Do they have the right communication? Do they understand where I'm coming from? Do I understand where they're coming from? And do we truly understand how we can take this entire story and build that kernel of trust? So a long-winded answer for motivation, but it loops back to intentions. Why are we here? What are we doing? And how does it impact them personally? And how does it circle back to that kernel of trust?
That's excellent. I like that you have an acronym to use. Well, it makes things easier to teach, I think, when you have an acronym. And it also makes it, I hate to do this, but it also makes it more impactful to the person because they remember. It's like, you know, I play guitar, and when I first learned the notes of the standard tuning, you know, you're taught like every every boy goes dancing after elections. There you go. So take that, and there, you know, now you know what they're supposed to be, and it's what stuck with me for, you know, 20 years. And I personally think it's the dumbest way to remember it, but it works.
You
So
remember, right? Yeah.
right. And that's the thing, whatever works is what you have to do. And I really like that you used the word intention, because for like the past 4 or 5 years, I've really harped on intentionality, and just being that person who everything that you're doing has a purpose behind it. It's not, like you said, we're not saying, hey, let's increase revenue by 20% because we're greedy and we want more money. We're saying let's increase revenue by 20% so we have headroom to do this, this, and this. And like you said, I mean, you tied it back to like income and bonus income. And I think, you know, that's logical, but it could also mean, hey, remember that product we've been trying to launch? Well, if we get the 20% revenue increase, we can finally launch that product, which then is going to be a catalyst for even more revenue increase. So I think intentionality is really important, because doing things just because doesn't get you anywhere. You have to do it for a purpose. There has to be a reason.
I think that one of the things I discovered the hard way is just because I understand the background and the context of why we're going to do something doesn't mean it's obvious to everyone else. And so I had a lot of initiatives that I launched early in my career where I was like, let's do this thing. And then nobody understood the why behind what I wanted to do. And then I spent so much time backtracking and trying to drag people along that I realized if I would just give them all of the context and knowledge and the reasons why behind why I want to do this thing, then either A, they can continue to talk me out of it because maybe it's a bad idea. I don't know everything. Or B, they can get along for the ride and start rowing in the same direction rather than kind of pulling me back. So over communicating why we're doing this, not just I am the leader, therefore we are doing this, is really that approach that makes intentionality and always thinking about, you know, I have a coworker who always says, what's in it for them? When we're going to do something, we have to answer the question, what's in it for them, the people who have to do the thing. So you have to say to yourself, your employees are saying, what's in it for me? You need to be able to answer that question with a compelling reason. What's in it for them?
Yeah, I always say that, you know, when you want to do a new initiative in your business, if you can't get your people to understand the why, there's probably a problem with what you're trying to do. You haven't thought it out well enough, because if you can't explain it to them in a way that they understand the why, you're missing something. I mean, I always say, like, my wife and I, we have another business partner. So there's three of us that run our multiple businesses, and we'll have meetings and one of us will have an idea and they'll bring it out. And then the other two will be like, huh? What are you talking about? And then, but it's a great idea. Well, it might be, but I don't think you fleshed it out, because we don't get it at all. It's like, over our head. Um, it's only when you can come out and other people go, oh yeah, I see that. They don't necessarily have to like jump up and down and think it's the greatest idea ever, but at least if they understand what it is you're trying to do, and then they can give you feedback too. Like you said, like maybe they talk you out of it. I mean, that's what you have a team for. And I think that says a lot about you as a leader, that your team could talk you out of something, because um, it means you listen. And I think that's a key trait of any leader is don't just talk, spend more time listening and less time talking. Everybody knows you're the boss. Everybody knows that. So they also assume you're also the subject matter expert. But that doesn't mean you're the only person who knows what to do. And so let people talk you out of things. I think that's a great point to make for anyone who's trying to like break into leadership. And so that's another question I have for you. So, we talked a little bit about how companies don't seem to prepare people for leadership. They push them up the ladder, and then one day they're like, here's a team, manage them.
Right.
What's your advice for new managers that are in that position for the first time?
Assume you know less than the people that you are managing is usually my first approach. When I was interviewing for jobs back in the day, one of the questions that they'll ask you is what is your greatest failure, right? That's that tricky question that they're trying to get you on. And my greatest failure was truly an example of management. And so I was a part of a student organization. We were one of the largest student organizations on campus. And I was appointed the executive director of the organization. It was a young organization, so there wasn't a deep bench of people who were ready to be leadership for it. However, the people I would be executive directing had at least one more year of experience on me in running this organization. They were on the committee and the board the year before. And I made the life-changing mistake of going into that role of being their quote unquote boss and acting like it. I came in with I'm the boss, you're going to do what I say. I don't care that you've been here longer because you're going to do it my way or you can move on. I don't need this kind of pushback. We have big things to do, yada, 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 putting on my, my big pants of, I'm in charge and you're going to do what I say. It went horribly. And I ended up having to stand in front of them about 3 months later and apologize to all of them for the way I acted and my behavior and the situation and the experiences that we were in. Because everybody was not working towards it. They were doing things without consulting me or including me. And then I would get mad. And it was just a really bad situation. But what I took away from it was that you need to come into these situations with an open mindset, with a continuous learning approach, with the idea that you don't know everything and you will never know everything. And finding that network of people who are inside the organization who can help you, guide you, go through this experience that we were all trying to do together, and then with an open mind to learn, and then connecting with other people who've gone through the same thing that you've gone through. Who held that position for you? Can you reach out to them? Who holds a similar position across the organization or in a different business that you can make connections with? And just recognizing that there's always more to learn and you can always be better tomorrow than you are today.
That's actually excellent advice, because I think, in any type of management position, I remember years ago, I was a retail manager and one of my specialties was reducing theft.
Mm-hmm.
And they would send me to stores that had inventory and theft was super high. And I just have a short stint there, 6 months to fix the problem. And it's really tempting to come in and be like, look, I'm the subject matter expert here. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. But instead, I'd come in and say, tell me about your store. Tell me about your customers. What are some strange patterns that you see? And just ask a lot of questions and listen to what the employees say. Because, hey, they've worked there way longer than I did. And they may not have done a great job of controlling theft, but hey, they understood why they were getting ripped off. And it helped me figure out a plan to squash that. I think that's a humbling experience too, to have to apologize later that, hey, I did some things that were not so good. But kudos to you for doing that, because the apology probably went a long way with the people that you were working with, because it showed that you had realized, that hey, I messed up here, and I'm not going to hide the fact that I messed up. A lot of people would have just made the pivot and kept moving on. You took the time to make an apology. And I think actually without it, it probably would have been a big failure. How
I
did that
think
all
that
work
was,
out for you?
we actually ended up having a great year. It was so we do it was fundraising for a local children's hospital, and we actually had a record-breaking fundraising year
There you go.
point. And I truly believe you're right, though. If I would have just moved on and pretended like my behavior had never had an impact, or pointed fingers and said, well, I did some things, but you guys also did some things. Like, I did not do that. I stood up there and said, this is what I did. This is why. Let me give you the context of why I did it. Let me tell you that I recognize it was wrong. This is what I would like to do moving forward. Are you ready to accept me and forgive me for these things that I did? Can we move forward? Because ultimately it's up to them. I'm only as effective of a leader as the people that I lead. And if I cannot have the humility to step back and say, I made the mistake, are you willing to forgive me? Can we move forward? Those specific words, then I have no business being their leader in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I think, it goes back to once I was told, when there's a conflict between two people, what would they go, what if you're so busy trying to apportion blame. What if I told you you're both 100% at fault? And you start to think about it and you realize, they're right. Like I could have reacted differently. They could have reacted differently. If either one of us had done something differently, we might not have had the conflict. And like in your case, you're right. You could have pointed the finger and been like, well, which one of you stepped up and said, hey, listen, that's never worked before and it's not going to work now? Nobody did that, so it's your fault too. But really, as the leader, the buck stops with you, and that's what you showed them when you didn't point the finger back. So that's probably played a huge role in why you had a great year after that. So good for you. So, well, this has been a very interesting conversation. But if you could let us know, like let the listeners know where they could reach out to you if they want to find you.
Yeah. If you just want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can just search my name, and you'll find me. You'll find Chief of Staff at Lyft. And you can also find me at alyssanolte.com, ALYSSANOLTE.com. And you can connect with me. I'm really just looking to talk with cool people who are doing cool things and really want to make the world more than just a dollar, but a truly great place to live in.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving your time today to be here. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for listening to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific. Come back next week.